Okay, tonight we're doing some Pei Zayin and Shagged. We're going to try to do, I hope we'll have time to do Pei Zayin and Pei Ches together. They're not related to one another. I mean, they both talk about chametz, but they're otherwise not related. Each one is short and sweet, and actually considerably, as far as I consider it, considerably easier than some of the sugyas we've been dealing with up until now. So let's get going. The first one is we're going to discuss the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda about Bir Chametz. As we know, the Gemara says in Psachim Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, which is the first Mar Makom, Tanya Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Ein Bir Chametz El Sreifa. You have to burn Chametz. There's no other way you can be kind of the mitzvah of Tashbisu, as we've explained. V'hadin Nosein. He learns it out from a Kal V'chomer. Uman Nosar She'ino Vayira Uval Yamatzei Tan Sreifa. Nosar, which doesn't have the Surim Vayira and Vayamatzei, you need to burn. Chametz, but nosars are the parts that are left over from the carbon. You're supposed to eat it within a certain time, and you didn't, so you have to burn it. Chametz She'eshno Vayira Vayamatzei. Chametz does have an issur to keep it around. Lo Kol Shekain certainly should require Shetan Sreifa, which doesn't certainly require burning. Amrullah, when they said to him, the Chachamim, who disagree, that Kol Din Shata Don Tchilas L'Hachmer Sofil Hakol Eino Din. Right, we discussed this in length in one of the other shiurim, that any Kal V'chomer that really is going to end up creating a kula is not a valid Kal V'chomer. In this case, also it's going to cause a kula, because though matzah eats in Musarfo Yehi Yoshevu Batal, if he doesn't find the wood to burn it, he's not going to do anything. We discussed why in the previous year. But the Torah says you should get rid of it, and therefore we maintain you get rid of it however you want. So therefore he said a different din and actually skipped some of the Gemara because we want to get to the maskon of his drasha, which is more important for our sugya. So there's pieces here that are skipped, but going on to the next column, Chazar Rabbi Yehuda v'Daron din acher. So Rabbi Yehuda replied a new limud. Nosar yeshno bal tosiru, v'chametz b'val tosiru. Right, so it's not a Kal V'chomer, it's just a memetzinu. As we know that you're not allowed to keep nosar, and you know you're not allowed to keep chametz. Man nosar b'sreifa, av chametz b'sreifa. So just like you burn nosar, so you burn chametz. Amrlo, they said to him, Asham talui v'chata sa'of habala safik lidvarecha yochichu. So there are two cases, an Asham talui or a chata sa'of, which is brought in a case of a safik. So in those two cases, if there's no sar, according to your shita, you are disproved. Shehein b'val tosiru, because you're not allowed to leave it over. You can't allow it to be no sar. Sha'ano omer b'sreifa, we hold it's b'sreifa. V'ata omer b'kavura, but you say that those types of nosar are are buried, not burned. Shasik Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda was quiet. So we see from here that not everything that's left over is burned, according to Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, some carbonos which are left over, you don't have to burn them, you can bury them. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda has no answer to this question, right? He learned a drasha, which maybe if he was the Chachamim would work, but if you're Rabbi Yehuda, it doesn't work. And so Rabbi Yehuda ended up being disproven with his own shita about the Ashram telling the Chatasof. So there we see the machlokas Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, and lahalacha, it's a machlokas. Some paskin like the Chachamim, it would be like the sheet of the Rif and the Rambam, and therefore you could destroy chametz however you want. Some shitas hold like Rabbi Yehuda, that would be Tosos. There are others that hold like Rabbi Yehuda as well. Now let's see the Rosh. The Rosh is going to discuss these two opinions, and he's going to bring, proofs and disproofs. We're just going to see it all inside in the Rosh, and then we're going to break it down, go through each proof and disproof separately as we go through this year. So the Rosh says, this is the second Ma'ar Makom, which is in Perek Beis in Psachim Os Yud Gimel, which is the Rosh on this Gemara that we just saw. He says at the top, Rashi pasuk Rabbi Yehuda. Rashi passes like Rabbi Yehuda. Mishum disasam lon tanakavase. The Perek Master did Tamura, because there's a stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda in Maseches Tamura. The chashiv chametz b'chlal kol hanisrafim. It includes chametz as one of the things that have to be burned. And we know the halacha is always like a stam mishnah, and therefore here the halacha is going to be like Rabbi Yehuda. Va'afal gav deshasak Rabbi Yehuda. Now, even though Rabbi Yehuda was quiet, right? In our mishnah, the end of the story was Rabbi Yehuda was left without any answers to explain his shita. So how can we pass him like him? Anan lo shaskinan, because we won't be quiet. Delo itosiv ela midivrei atzmo. The question against Rabbi Yehuda was only from Rabbi Yehuda's own shita. But if we don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda by no sir of an ashram taloi and no sir of a chatas ha'of, and we're going to hold all types of no sir are burned, so then it follows we should say that also chametz should be burned. V'chein pasak b'sefer hamitzvos, the sefer hamitzvos passes that way as well. V'chein pasak harav haBartzaloni, and also the Rav from Barcelona also passing this way. V'hevi raya, now he brought a proof. Mida Amar Rav Leil, because Rav said before, Shema Mina im bir chametz al shreifa. Rav had a statement that we see from whatever he was talking about that chametz has to be specifically burned. Right? And Rav is a later Amora, and we would generally pass it like it. So that's one set of opinions. However, the Gaon passes like the Chachamim. The Chayin Chaz Bal Itra passes that way as well. The Chayin Chaz Rabbi Yonah also passes like the Chachamim. The Imisham Stama de Temura. Now, if you're going to ask, what about the Stam Mishnah in Temura, which says you have to burn chametz? Kaimalon, we hold betray Masechtos in Seder, that in two Masechtos there's no order. The Imkain, and if so, halacha karabim. Halacha is like the rabbin. We'll explain what that means in a second. I realize it's not necessarily so clear without explanation. The Itik Shilach Rabbanan Gufayu, and if you're going to ask the Rabbanan themselves, Lilfu mi Nosar, maybe they should learn from Nosar. Delited who leka pircha, because according to them, as we explained, there's no question because they hold all types of nosar are burned. V'yesh lomer, the answer is delited who ikilik shuye. They could also have a question against the limud and say ma lenosar shechein kodesh. You can't learn from nosar because nosar is kudshim. Lakach, and therefore, roy lahachmer l'sorfo. You should be machmer to burn it. I guess because there are many shitas we said before, Rashi and the Sefer Mitzvos and the Rabbi Bartzaloni, so you should be machmer to burn it. Usreifa chamura, kiyis v'shili temura. We see from temura that burning is considered a chumra. Himratzal hachmar atzmul esrof esanekvar rashai. We hold that if you want to be machmer and burn something which is supposed to be buried, so you're allowed to. According to Rabbeinu Tam, and the Mefarish b'shas biuro hashbasasa b'chol davar. According to Rabbeinu Tam, that at the time of burning it, you could destroy it however you want. Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, hainu b'shashishas. That's after the 6th hour. The azri gilin ha'olam levar. That's when people generally burn it. Ein nafkus b'sakzeh. So if so, then there's no real nafkamina in this machlokes. Kuli hai so much. Because he's not going to leave his chametz until after chatzos. He's going to burn it before chatzos. And when he does before chatzos, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees he can do whatever you want. So if there's not really such a nafkamina whether we hold like Rabbi Yehuda or the Chachamim. And also Rashi agrees that in the 5th hour you could already destroy it with anything. It's just before that he holds there's a machlokes. So therefore, if you're burning in the time when everyone's burning their chametz, you're basically okay with burning it, with destroying it however you want. But if you want to know, in a situation where there would be a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chacham, which would either be earlier than that, according to one opinion, I forget which one offhand, or after that, according to the other opinion, then there would be machlokes, and then for lichatchila, according to the Rosh, you should burn it to be choshesh for those opinions. Okay, so let's get back to the proofs to the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. That's basically what we had. 3 proofs to the Shita of Yehuda. One proof was there's a Stam Mishnah in Temura, like Rabbi Yehuda. The second proof was the fact that the question the Gemara asked against Shita's Rabbi Yehuda is only within Rabbi Yehuda's Shita himself that he holds that there are types of nosar that are not burned, but we hold that all nosar is burned. And therefore, we do have the drasha of Rabbi Yehuda. And the third proof was the words that Rava said of Shema Mina. We learn that you have to burn chametz. So let's discuss each one of those proofs separately. So the first proof was from the Mishnah in Temura, which we could see in the third Mar Makom. It's on Tumur Daflam Gilman Bees. And over there it says Elu Hein Hanikvarim, the following are buried, and it goes through a whole list. And then if you skip down 5 lines, it says at the end of the line, Elu Hein Hanisrafin. These are the things that need to be burned, and it gives a whole list. The first one is Chametz Pesach Yisar. If you have to burn Chametz. Right, so you see that this Mishnah is like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that Chametz must be burned. The Rosh had answered, right, we saw the Rosh already answered against this proof to say that within 2 Masechtas there's no order. What does that mean? That means that the rule is as follows. If I have a Stam Mishnah, and there's no other Mishnayos that talk about the topic, even if I know it's a Machlokes Tanaim because of Braisos or because of a Gemara or whatever it is, but there's no other Mishnah that discusses the topic, then the halacha is like the Stam Mishnah. That's clear. Now if I have 2 Mishnayos, one of them is a Stam Mishnah, and one of the Mishnayos has a Machlokes in it, so then it's not always the case that the halacha is like the Stam Mishnah. It depends on the order. If first you have a Stam Mishnah, and then later on you have a Machlokes, so then the halacha is not like the Stam Mishnah. If you first had the Machlokes in the Mishnah, and then later on you had a Stam Mishnah, then the halacha would be like the Stam Mishnah. That works if you're within 1 Masechta. If I'm in 1 Masechta, so I know what the order is. But in between Masechtas, there's not specifically an order. I mean, we have an order of the way we say Shas is put into an order, right? Brachos through Nida. But in regards to this rule of the way Rebbe would have taught the Mishnayos in order to teach you how to paskin, we don't know whether it would be considered a Machlokes and a Stam Mishnah or a Stam Mishnah and then a Machlokes. So since we don't know it would be a Safek, so we'd have to go back to the general rule that we paskin like the Rabbin. That seems to be what the Rosh is saying. However, the Shagas Aryeh asks against the Rosh that that's not really the way the Rosh works with these types of Machlokes. In other words, in a case we have a Stam Mishnah in 1 Masechta and a Machlokes in a different Masechta, we do not see that the Rosh paskins always like the Shitas Chachamim. We see very often he does paskin like the Stam Mishnah. And he brings 2 cases, and we'll see them inside. So the first is a Stam Mishnah in Maseches Arla, Perek Gimel Mishnah Tes. That's Os Daled in the Mar Makomos, and it says there, HaChadash Aser Min HaTorah Mikol Makom. Chadash, right, which is the grain that grows before Pesach, before you bring the Omer, is Aser, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. It's a Stam Mishnah. There's no Machlokes in that Mishnah. However, there's a different Mishnah, and the Rif and the Rosh passion like the Stam Mishnah, that Chadash applies B'chol Mokum, not only in Eretz Yisrael. There's another Mishnah in Kedushin, right? Kedushin is a separate Masechta, right? So it mirrors our case where we have 2 Mishnayos and 2 different Masechtas, and there it says in Kedushin, which is Osein the Mar Makomos, Kol mitzvah shi tulia ba'aretz, einu neheges ela ba'aretz. Any mitzvah that's dependent on the land, it's a land-based mitzvah, so it only applies in Eretz Yisrael. V'she'einu tulia ba'aretz, if it's not based on the land, no heges being ba'aretz being mechutz aretz, it applies everywhere. Chutz min ha'arla, u'klaim, except for arla and klaim. Rabbi Eliezer omer afa chadash. Rabbi Eliezer says also chadash. So the Tanna Kama holds chadash is only in Eretz Yisrael, because it's not one of the exceptions. It's Rabbi Eliezer that says that Chadash applies everywhere. So we see that Stam Mishnah in Arla is really like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. So here you have a Stam Mishnah in one place, and in a different Mishnah you have the Tanna Kama, which is like the Chachamim, against Rabbi Eliezer. So how come over there the Rosh is not passing like the Chachamim, he's passing like the Stam Mishnah? And we have another case. The other case is in Maseches Brachos, Daf Memamot Aleph, which is Osvav in the Mar Makomos, and says as follows: Birich al Piris Ha'ilon, Buri Pri Ha'adama, Yatza. If a person makes a bracha on a fruit that comes from a tree, let's say an apple, he makes a Buri Pri Ha'adama, it's the wrong bracha, nevertheless he's Yotze. And skip down to the Gemara. The Gemara explains, Man Tana De'ikr Elon Arahi, who's the opinion that holds that the tree is really mainly from the ground, as we view it as part of the ground. Amar of Nachbar, and therefore you could say Hadama on something that grows from a tree. Amar of Nachbar, yes, like Rabbi Yehuda, it's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Ditnan, as the Mishnah says, Yavi Shamayan, V'nixas Elon, if the stream dried up, or the tree was cut down from which you took the fruits from, maybe Ve'inokara, you bring the Bikurim from that tree, but you can't say the Psukim. Because the psukim are thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the source of these fruits, which you don't have anymore because your tree was chopped down. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, maybe V'korei. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you could bring, and you could say the psukim, because you're thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the land it came from. It's true, the tree isn't there anymore, but what really produced the fruit? It was really produced from the land. So you see, it's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that holds that a fruit of a tree really grows from the ground, and therefore you could say a hadama on that fruit. So we see the Gemara itself brought this Mishnah, where you see a machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, and in this case, also the Rosh Paskins, like the Stam Mishnah in Brachos, right, even though there's this machlokes in Maseches Bikurim. So we see the Rosh does paskin like the Das Yachid, the individual opinion of Rabbi Eliezer by Chadash, and he passes like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda by Brachos. So what's his issue with the fact that that Rashi wants to pass on like Rabbi Yehuda because of the Stam Mishnah in Tamura? But it seems to be very similar. Now, the truth is, the Shagas Aryeh adds a little bit of an explanation. The Gemara itself does tell us this thing, that if I have two different Masechtas, so I don't know what the order is. Right? So why is it, in fact, that in all these cases we see that we are passing like the Stam Mishnah? If we don't know, maybe it could be a Stam Va'achar Kaf Machlokis, in which case we wouldn't pass like the Stam Mishnah. So the Rosh explains, because we're going to view each situation like a suffix. Maybe the halacha should be like the Stam Mishnah. Maybe the halacha shouldn't be like the Stam Mishnah. So we're passing in each of these cases not because of the Stam Mishnah, but because it's a suffix. So what happens in a suffix? In the first case, we had a suffix of chadash. Chadash is an Isser D'Oraisa, and we want to know, does it apply in Chutz La'aretz or not? I have a Stam Mishnah that says yes. I have a different Mishnah that the Tanakama says no. And since they're different Masechtas, I have a suffix, what the halacha is like. So suffix D'Oraisa l'chumra. I have to be machmer on Chadash and Chutz La'aretz. It happens to be that's the Shita of the Stam Mishnah. But I'm not passing that way because it's the Stam Mishnah. I'm passing that way because it's a suffix, and that happens to be the more Chomer Shita. By Brachos, we would say the same thing. I said Hadama on my apple. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, I was Yotzei. I don't have to say a bracha. According to the Chachamim, I wasn't Yotzei. I do have to say a bracha. I have a Stam Mishnah that says I don't have to say a bracha, but I have a different Mishnah that the Chachamim say that I do have to make a bracha, or I could learn from that Mishnah that the Chachamim say I have to make a bracha, and I don't know what the order is, so therefore I don't know if the halach is that I should make a bracha, I shouldn't make a bracha, and the rule is, in the case of a suffix brachos lahakel, and that's why we're saying if a person made hadama on a fruit that he does not make another bracha, not because we know the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda, but because we have a suffix, and if I have a suffix whether to make a bracha, so I don't make a bracha. He says, though, if so, even if we use that rule, what would we say in our case, by chametz? I have a Mishnah which would say that I have to burn my chametz in order to be yosef mitzvah d'oraisa of tashbisu. I have another Mishnah which, based on machlokes, I would think I would pass it like the chachamim, that I don't have to burn my chametz. I can be mekel and destroyed in a different way. And I don't know what the order is. I don't know which Mishnah the halacha is like. So therefore I have a suffix, how to be yotzei mitzvah d'oraisa, suffix d'oraisa l'chumra, I should have to burn it. So therefore the Shagas Aryeh ends up with a question on the Rosh, that based on the Rosh's own method of paskening, when you have this type of situation of a Stam Mishnah in one Masechta and a Machlokes in a different Masechta, it should really come out like Rashi. That you really should be burning the chametz, not like the question that the Rosh asked on him. So that's how he ends up with that proof. So it actually seems, right, one proof from the Shagas Aryeh, he likes the proof of Rashi, that we should paskin, in this case like Rabbi Yehuda. So we went through one proof. Now, the second proof was the Anan Lo Shaskinan proof, was the idea that the whole discussion in the Gemara Psachim between the Chachamim Rabbi Yehuda, and the Chachamim checkmated Rabbi Yehuda by saying that we don't see that all Nosar is burned. That's only within the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda himself. That's why Rabbi Yehuda had no answer. But we, who hold that all Nosar is burned, so we should be able to learn from Nosar that to burn the chametz, like Rabbi Yehuda. That was the second proof. So the Rosh deflected the proof and he said, not necessarily. Maybe we would not learn from Nosar for a different reason, because Nosar is Kadshim, and we're not going to learn chulin from kachim. We're not going to learn the din of chametz from kachim. The Shagas Aryeh is very not happy with this question of the Rosh, and he says if that was the case, then the Gemara should have said so, because the Chachamim are asking a question against Rabbi Yehuda which only applies to Rabbi Yehuda. So it's a very limited question they're asking against Rabbi Yehuda's drasha. They should ask a more broad question which would apply to everybody. Right? Say, if you hold that you can't learn from kachim, so say you can't learn from kachim, that would be across the board. It wouldn't make a difference what you held by nosar. The fact that they're asking a specific question about the nosar within the Shita Rabbi Yehuda seems to imply that they wouldn't hold of this greater question that the Rosh is asking. However, says the Shagas Aryeh, you could say though that the whole Kal V'chomer of Yehuda was only within the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, and there's the whole premise of this drasha is a Shitas Rabbi Yehuda drasha, and therefore the Chachamim don't have to deal with it at all. They only have to deal with it to what Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Rabbi Yehuda, you think this is a good drasha, so I could bring a shita from you yourself that it's not a good drasha. We don't have to discuss whether it's a good drasha for us or not, because it never started as a drasha for us. And why is that? It says, in truth, nosar is much more chamor than chametz. Right? We said chametz is more chamor because it's bali rabbi matzeh, but nosar, so therefore there are more chumras by chametz. It's not true, because nosar is usher forever. Once you leave the carbon past the proper time, it becomes nosar, and once it's nosar, it's usher forever. Chametz is only usher on Pesach. After Pesach is over, so the chametz is mutter again, d'oraisa. What? Nosar always has to be burned, right? It doesn't matter how long you leave it, you're going to have to burn it. So therefore, we can't learn a chumrah from nosar to chametz. Chametz is not.
It's not the same chametz. That's one that's after Pesach again.
No, the same chametz.
You don't buy chametz over Pesach.
So chametz over Pesach, right? If you remember from one of the previous yerim, is a machlokis. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's aser midaraisa. We hold it's mutter midaraisa. There's a knas. There's a special knas that you can't eat it, but it's midaraisa. It's okay, right? So therefore, it works like this. According to Yehuda, nosar chametz is more chomer than nosar, because chametz has isser b'ayir b'ayir matzeh, and plus it's also forever. According to Yehuda, it's also forever. Any chametz that was there on Pesach is also forever. So according to him, you have a kal v'chomer. According to Chachamim, there's no kal v'chomer, because after Pesach, your chametz becomes mutter. So chametz is not more chomer than nosar. Nosar has chumras that chametz doesn't have. So therefore, you can't learn anything from nosar at all unless you're Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda wanted to make a drasha. They asked from the shita Rabbi Yehuda. They don't have to deal with whether they have a question according to their shita, because the whole limud never started according to their shita. That would be the question that the Shagas Aryeh said he would ask against that proof. Okay, so that's two proofs. The first proof Shagas Aryeh seemed to agree with, right? The Stam Mishnah. The second proof he's seeming to dispose of. Now the truth is, it's kind of a little bit ruins also the first proof, because it's true that we have rules of what happens. You have a Stam Mishnah and you have a Machlokis, and you can figure out based on those rules. But if the whole sheet of Rabbi Yehuda doesn't even start according to the way we paskin, so then I don't think even if we had a Stam Mishnah we could pass like the Stam Mishnah. Right? The whole reason why you would think to burn chametz is because it's more chamer than nosar, but it's not according to us. So even if you have a Stam Mishnah that says it, I don't think we could pass in that way. So this second mahalach of the Shagas Aryeh, I think, throws out everything. The third proof that they brought was from the words of Rava. Now, what were the words of Rava? Let's see it inside. And this Gemara we've seen quoted a few times, so it'll sound a little bit familiar. O Zion is the Gemara himself from Daf Hey. Rabbi Akiva Omer, sorry for the end of the line. Rabbi Akiva says, "Einot tzarich." We don't need any other drasha to teach us that you have to destroy the chametz on Erev Pesach, right? Because the pasuk says you destroy chametz on the first day. The pashas would be, it means the first day of Pesach. We make drashas to push it earlier that it's really talking about Erev Pesach. He says you don't need the drasha we said before. It says you have to destroy the chametz. Uksiv, and the pasuk also says kol malachlo tasu, not you can't do any malacha on Pesach. We know that burning would be an av malacha, and therefore you can't be burning your chametz on Pesach. The pasuk is telling you to burn chametz. It must be you have to burn chametz before the Pesach. Now Rava sends to the bottom of that column, Amar Rava, Shmami Nami Rabbi Kiva Tlas. We learned three things from Rabbi Kiva. Shmami Nami Bir Chametz El Shreifa. Firstly, he holds you could burn chametz only, because if you could destroy it another way, maybe you could destroy it in a way which isn't a malacha, and you could do that on Pesach. Ushmami Na Havara L'chalik Yatzas. We also know Havara is L'chalik, which means it's an Av malacha. Havara. Ushmamina lomri and hoel v'hutra avara tzara chutra naimishol tzara. This we discussed a lot in one of the previous years, that we don't say that since I'm allowed to burn things on Yom Tov for food purposes, therefore I could burn it for any purpose. Right. So those are the three things we learned from Rabbi Kiva. So the Rav Yehuda Mibar Tzaloni, he wanted to learn from this Gemara that we see Rava holds that you have to burn the chametz. Says the Shagas Aryeh, it's not a proof at all. He's saying all of this only from the words of Rabbi Kiva. We see Rabbi Kiva holds this way. That doesn't mean we hold this way. And a proof to this is that the last thing on the list, which we discussed already extensively, is we don't say, according to Rabbi Kiva, we don't say that since I'm allowed to burn for food purposes and I'm allowed to burn for other Yom Tov purposes, but we do hold of that concept. Right? We do hold, since I'm allowed to, famous example that's brought in Maseches Beitzah is I'm allowed to carry outside for food purposes, so I can carry outside for any other purpose. That's the way we hold. We don't hold like Rabbi Kiva. So if we don't hold like Rabbi Kiva in that detail, even though Rava said it, right, we see that Rabbi Kiva holds that way, so we don't have to hold like Rabbi Kiva, that which Rava said. Rabbi Kiva held that you have to burn chametz. Rabbi Kiva held that way. That doesn't mean we pass in that way. So that takes care of the three proofs that we discussed. And now the Shagas Aryeh brings another extremely interesting question on really the whole sugya. And that is from the Mishnah in Tamura, which we already quoted, so it's still on that page, that first page, Os Gimel. The Mishnah says, if you look in the Mishnah, it says, 4 lines from the bottom of the first column in Os Gimel. As shadarkan lisrof yisrof. The things you have to burn, you have to burn. As shadarkan likover, you cover it. The things you have to bury, you have to bury. Umadlikin bepas. No, I skipped something. Uh-oh. I think I skipped something. I'm saying I don't have it, I didn't bring the whole Mishnah. Basically, the Mishnah ends up bringing a machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda, that if I have something that's supposed to be buried, means it doesn't require burning, am I allowed to burn it? According to the Chachamim, I'm not allowed to burn it. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you are allowed to burn it. And the Gemara explains that. I do have over here, in the second column, Kol hanek barim lo yisrafu. Anything that's supposed to be buried, you're not allowed to burn. That's the sheet of the Tanakama. My time, why? Mishum de nikvarin, Ephron aser. Something that's supposed to be burned, something that's not supposed to be burned, and you burn it, the ashes would be aser. The nisrafin, Ephron mutter. But something that's supposed to be burnt, after you burn it, the ashes become mutter. The nikvarin, alright, so then the Gemara goes in to discuss that concept, but that's the shita of the Tanakama. I'm not allowed to burn something that doesn't need to be burnt, because if I burn it, I might use the ashes. Something that I need to burn, the ashes become mutter. Something I don't need to burn, the ashes are aser. Therefore, I'm not allowed to burn it. Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the ashes are aser if I burn it, but he allows me to burn it, and he's not concerned I'm going to use the ashes. Right, so that's a machlokis about whether I'm allowed to burn it or I'm not allowed to burn it. But the ashes for sure are going to be aser if I'm not supposed to burn it. Now, how's that going to work by chametz? According to Rabbi Yehuda, if I burn it, you have to burn chametz, so the ashes are mutter. According to the Chachamim, if I burn the chametz, the ashes are aser. Right? So it turns out that the chumrah of Rabbi Yehuda turns into also a kula, that the ashes become mutter. If so, how come in the Gemara we say the Chachamim asks against Rabbi Yehuda, according to you it comes out a kula, and what's the kula? A very far-fetched case. The person can't find any wood, and he's not going to burn it. Why have to go to such a far-fetched case? He has wood, and he burns it, and according to you, Rabbi Yehuda, you come out with a kula that the ashes are mutter. How come the Gemara seems to be ignoring this whole halacha that there's a major difference between things that are burned and things that are not burned, to what the halacha is with their ashes. So, and a second question, which is, basically very similar to this question, is why do the Chum say you're allowed to burn chametz? The Chum say you're also allowed to destroy it in other ways, but it's clear from the Lashonos and the Mishnayos that the Chum say, I think the Lashon is af. You could also throw it into the wind, but they hold you could burn it also. But in Tamura they said something that you don't have to burn, you should not burn. But it's mashma that they would allow you to burn chametz. Why do they allow you to burn the chametz? You're going to have a problem with the ashes. Now, both of these questions, says the Shagat, can be answered according to the Shita of Rashi. Because if you remember, we've discussed, and the truth is even the Rush mentioned it, there's a machlokis of how to understand the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Is Rabbi Yehuda required to be burned only before the Zman HaIsser? Or does he require to be burned only after the Zman HaIsser? So Rashi held it has to be burned only before the Zman HaIsser. Once the time the Isser comes, you could burn it, you could destroy it however you want, according to everybody. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, before the Isser you could destroy it however you want. Then when it comes the time of the Isser, then Rabbi Yehuda requires you to burn it. So he says, according to Rashi, none of these questions are questions, because I'm burning it before the Zman that it becomes Asr. Chametz only is Asr on Pesach if it was Chametz when Pesach comes in. If it was already burnt, it's already ashes before Pesach comes in, so it never was Chametz on Pesach, it never becomes Asr. So it turns out that there's no kula by burning it before Pesach that the ashes are mutter, because the ashes will be mutter according to everybody. And there would be no reason why the Chum should say that you shouldn't burn it, because you're not going to come to any Isser after you burn it. It's not Chametz on Pesach. It's only according to Rabbeinu Tam that we'd have these problems. Rabbeinu Tam says, no, we're talking about on Pesach. And on Pesach, Rabbi Yehuda says you have to burn it. Then we have this issue, because it already was Chametz on Pesach, so it already was Asr. So you have something which is already Asr. If you burn it, the ashes would be Asr, according to the Chachamim. And according to Yehuda, the ashes would be mutter, and that creates all of these issues. So the Shagat actually brings out from these two questions a proof to the Shita of Rashi, the way Rashi explains it. Now, when I was going over this today, I was thinking that it's true that it's a proof to Rashi, but it comes out something very interesting, which is definitely not the way we paskin. I mean, if you look through the Shulchan Aruch, this is not the way we paskin, although I couldn't find that it's clear in the Gemara a proof against the Shagas Aryeh. But it would come out according to Shagas Aryeh that if I have chametz on Pesach, then I can't burn it. Right? He's saying everything's okay as long as you're burning it before Pesach. Everyone agrees it should be fine. You could burn it, and there's no problem with the ashes. But on Pesach, there would be a problem with the ashes. And if we would hold like the Chachamim, which I think we saw that was a machlokas, I don't know exactly what comes out, but I think we hold like the Chachamim that you could destroy it however you want. So you should not be able to burn it. That's not the halacha. The Shulchan Aruch says, it's clear from the Ramah at least, if you have chametz, basically you do burn it. So it comes out a little bit of a difficulty with this question of the Shagas Aryeh, which I don't have an answer to. Because I don't know how it would work according to us that we would burn chametz that we found in Pesach. I don't know why that's mutter, based on the Shagas Aryeh's question, because you have a problem with the ashes. I don't know. That's the end of Siman Pei Zayin. The question is, should we do Pei Ches or not?